let's talk about The Courier. The Courier is a new historical drama directed by Dominic Cooke. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, and it also stars Rachel Brosnahan, Jessie Buckley, Angus Wright. This is a cerebral, low-key kind of espionage Cold War thriller. It has a lot of nods and winks to films of a different era. One of the films I was thinking about, more recent films I was thinking about watching this movie was definitely Bridge of Spies. And its whole deal of like kind of wrestling with the relationship between the America and the UK, with Russia, the Soviet Union at the time during the Cold War. This movie takes place in the 1960s during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it centers around a true story of a British businessman who tries to help MI6 get a bunch of intel about the Soviet nuclear program during the Cold War through a Russian source named Oleg Penkovsky, who's codenamed Ironbark. And that is why the film was originally called Ironbark. It premiered at Sundance last year to pretty solid reviews. It's coming out now through Lionsgate in the United Kingdom and Roadside Attractions in the US. You can watch it now, and I think it's going to be hitting the UK, I think in May. So it's not everywhere yet, but if you can watch it, if you can watch it right now, I think it's just the US and maybe a few other territories. But okay, what do you think of The Courier, Will? You saw this not as recently as I did, right?
Yeah, I saw this one a couple weeks ago. I actually saw this a little bit before I went to Sundance, or not Sundance, South by Southwest. So yeah, maybe like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, yeah. So it's been kind of hitting theaters and select and drive-ins and all of that fun stuff. But what did you think of the movie? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, by and large, I did. The way I described it to you was that it's kind of like if The Informant, the Steven Soderbergh film from a few years ago, if that was told in the style of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. That's, I think, kind of the tone of it, though I know you were saying that it is also reminiscent of Bridge of Spies, which is a film I guess I just don't have as close to my memory as those other films. So I guess make it that what you will. But yeah, I mean, I think what works really well is that this is the type of film that I think plays to Benedict Cumberbatch's strengths as an actor, and that a lot of films lately have been, I can see him like kind of trying to push out of his wheelhouse a little bit, experiment a little bit more, and I think some roles work and some don't. But I think this type of role where he's like kind of like, you know, like a pencil pusher, but he's also like, you know, he has like a moral conscience, like he knows what's right and what's wrong, but he also, you know, he has his faults and he can't really do everything right, but he is fairly charismatic and he can like win people over at the same time, but he is like easily befuddled and kind of like in over his head. And I think Benedict Cumberbatch is good at playing like dweebs like that as opposed to like something else. And I think as a starring vehicle for him, it works pretty well. I think what holds me back from being an outright good film is that the last, I want to say like 25 minutes become a different type of film. And it's not to say that that story isn't worth telling. I think, you know, because it is part of the story, I understand why they felt so much time to devote it, but it feels like Tom Hooper took over for that segment, and it becomes like this kind of weird like Oscar bait type film. And it doesn't become bad, but it just becomes a lesser film than I think it was during the more stylistic kind of style bits, where it's like kind of darkly comedic. It had kind of like a like wry tone, and I think that was a little bit more appealing and fun than what we got at the end. But I'm not quite sure where you land on the film. I'm curious.
Yeah, you know, I have a hard time saying anything too extreme about this movie. I think that it's there's nothing about it that I think is bad necessarily, but I don't think there's anything about it that is all that great either. It's kind of pretty middling in every possible way. My biggest issue with it is that it's just kind of stiff. A lot of the movie has just a very low energy to it.
A British film.
And there's just a lot of scenes that I just couldn't, I don't know. There wasn't a lot of verve. There wasn't a lot of just the tension. I wasn't feeling that all the time, I guess, even though I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be so hooked and so nervous about what's going to happen with these characters that just didn't really happen here, even though I cared about the characters for sure. I care a lot about the main two guys in this, played by Benedict Cumberbatch and I forget Angus Wright, where I just think that like or not Angus Wright, excuse me. I can never pronounce his last name, but Ninidze. I apologize. He's great. He's in Nowhere in Africa, but watching them on screen together is, I think, the best thing about this movie. Like their friendship that kind of grows in this, and just like the sort of hard-boiled nature of their back and forth. There's a scene in here with like that calls on Black Swan that I think is really effective. And they're the movie, right? But then there's just other times where they try to bring in other characters who just aren't as interesting. I think Rachel Brosnahan, I like Rachel Brosnahan a lot as an actress. I think she's really talented. In this movie, I think she is just not very good. And I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion, but I just did not see how her character brought anything authentic to this. I just felt like she was like this American character inserted into a movie that is otherwise British. And I just thought it was unnecessary. Like, I don't know. There's this whole thing because she's a CIA officer. There's this whole thing where she is like kind of the like heart of a dynamic with an MI6 agent, and I just felt like it was an unnecessary addition to the movie, or one that just didn't ring as true. Maybe there was a way they could have done it better. And then there's Jessie Buckley. I love Jessie Buckley. You know this, Will. Jessie Buckley is one of my favorite actors working right now, and I hate I hate the way this character is written. The performance is spot on, but just what happens with her character and the decisions and things she says and what they put this character through, I just did not respond well to it. So those are all my big negative things for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that she kind of gets to play a certain stock type of character that really doesn't play to her strengths. We just saw her recently in, like, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, along with many other things where it's clear that she is such a, you know, dynamic and strong actress, and to have her play, you know, like a character that feels like something reminiscent of like the 90s at this point is, you know, it's kind of insulting for someone who is clearly a lot more talented than the role that she was given here. But at the same time, I think I am, I guess, a little bit more favorable to this film, just because I do like that it is just a fairly stylish, no nonsense sort of button down spy thriller. Like it knows what it's going for. It's definitely like a film that's made for adults, and it makes no pretensions about it. But at the same time, like I said, I feel like if it weren't for those last few minutes, I think it could have been a lot stronger, a lot more stylistically distinct. And I just feel like those last few minutes just feel like a lesser film, like another filmmaker kind of took over and did something that wasn't quite as interesting as what came before. Now, obviously, I think there's a good film to mine from that story and like what happens from that point, but I just don't think it really gels well with what was happening before there, and it just doesn't. It makes the film kind of uneven, unfortunately, in a way that I wasn't anticipating from the onset. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think by and large, quality-wise, it's closer to the middle, but I had a good enough time, or appreciate enough of this, that I would give it a kind and admirable kind of B-.
We're not far off. I'm a B- as well. I just haven't. I think that I was maybe like overdoing my negative here, but I do want to say, Cumberbatch, he's the reason to see this. He does bring like a humanity and a sincerity to the performance, and I was invested in him. And even though I was frustrated by other things in this movie, by no means does it fail to sort of do what it's trying to do, which is, I think, a difficult thing. It's difficult to make the Cold War interesting. There's no exciting set pieces. There's no like gunfights or anything like that. They have to make conversations and shady rooms interesting, and they do pull off some of that. They pull off like how intimidating the KGB is, the surveillance state. They manage to make all of that stuff loom over these characters, just not in a way that I thought was tense enough for me to be fully into a film that otherwise would be a prestige drama that we would be talking about for Oscars. I think that it just sort of misses the mark on that. So, but still a B-. I mean, it is very competent and well made, and definitely nothing to sniff at.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the type of films I would like to watch at like the more ritzy theater on like a Saturday afternoon for a matinee, like a 2:30 show or something like that back in theater times, where like, you'll probably be in there with like maybe like 4 grandmas and, like their respective partners, and
literally me and like 20 like people in there above the age of 60.
Right. And, everyone, kind of keeps to themselves. Like, you can kind of hear ruffling from, like, a cough drop or something halfway through the film. But everyone's kind of quiet, just keeping to themselves. And then the movie's over, and you're just like, it was pretty good. I like that Benedict Cumberbatch. And, and you just, yeah.
How
what?
offensive.
Is that offensive?
That was very offensive to me.
Why is that?
Not how Grandma Charades talks.
Oh, was that Grandma Charades?
I don't know. Was it?
I thought that was just a grandma, like a old lady.
I liked the
Grandma
Ironbark.
Charades. What are you doing here?
I just watched this new movie called The Courier.
I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, we actually haven't had a talk in a while. You usually talk to my friend Mr. Millennial, but this is just me, Will.
Oh, I can't stand that Mr. Millennial. He
Why is
always
that?
drops me off at the movie theater without money for concessions.
Ah, geez, that's very inconsiderate.
I'm going to give The Courier a C-.
Oh, wow, that's pretty strongly negative. I didn't anticipate that.
Liberal propaganda.
Oh, wow, okay, so you got a bias against this film.
Well, I do. It says that the Cuban Missile Crisis was solved by MI6. But that's not the case at all. It was America, baby.
All right, do you have some time? We can talk about this a little bit more if you want to share your
No,
thoughts.
I have to get going to Gold's Gym to get
Okay.
my vaccine shot.
Oh, well, that's good.
Wow, that was weird. Who was
Wait,
it?
where'd you go, John?
I don't know. This lady barged in and told me I had to wait outside. So
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
I
glad
didn't
you
hear
got
anything
out.
That just happened. Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, I caught up with a good friend of mine, Grandma Charade, so it was nice to catch her again. I didn't expect to see her again.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But can we talk about The Courier? I know this is what we're supposed to do.
yeah.
Now.
Yeah, you have some more to say about that?
Not too much. I just think as a historical drama, it does its job and does it fine. And yeah, if I would see this kind of in a similar circumstance, like in in a matinee showing, I'd walk out of it, probably forget most of the movie in a while, and then someone's going to bring this movie up in a couple of years and be like, well, yeah, remember Cumberbatch in The Courier? And I'm going to be like, no. And then they're going to be like, no, you saw that movie, John. You talked about it. And yeah, it'll go about
play the
that way.
tape. Yeah. That makes sense. That sounds about right.
So a double B- from the boys. And
the boys.
B for British. Yeah, B- for British minus.
Yeah, and Grandma Charades, you weren't around. She gave it a C-, so she was a little bit more negative than us.
Wow. Why?
It's a whole
weird.
thing. You can listen back to the tape.
Okay.
It's a whole thing.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.